Hello book people, PT here. Look, I was not going to make this video. I was going to let Halloween go by unremarked on this channel. But then I received a letter from YouTube reminding me that as a member of the bookish YouTube community, I was legally obligated to make 3 videos every year. Those are the year-end wrap-up of my favorite books of the year, my bookish reading goals for next year, and a Halloween video. So I have to. There's no choice in the matter. So because of that, I'm going to throw myself into it wholeheartedly, and I'm going to tell you about my top 5 creepy reads. So I read a lot of horror, a lot of creepy books, but I don't get too creeped out usually by them. I'm not like getting too scared while I'm reading. It's a rare book that'll put me a little bit at ease, and I'll know because I'll wake up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, and I'll just lay there like, I don't think so. I think I'll just wait this one out. So there you go. But I'm going to tell you about 5 reads. These are creepy. I'm not going to lie. You've been warned. The creep factor is high with these. The first one I'm going to tell you about is The Grin of the Dark by Ramsey Campbell. Now, Ramsey Campbell is pretty creepy. He's maybe the creepiest of authors. I've never read a book by him that hasn't creeped me out a little bit, but The Grin of the Dark takes the cake. This was one of the most unsettling reads I've ever experienced. I didn't even go back and look at the description of this, so I'm gonna tell you what I remember it being about, and I could be wrong, because it was quite a few years ago that I read this, probably a good 10 years ago, maybe it wasn't even out that long ago. I should have probably looked before this, but at least 5 years ago, we'll say. The story is this guy, some kind of film student, who learns about this. There's this urban legend of this clown in the vaudeville era, the early silent film era, who released this movie that was so funny that everyone who watched it died laughing. It's kind of just an urban legend, and he goes to find the truth behind the urban legend and tries to find, does a copy of this movie exist? What's the story behind this? And so he's going and investigating. He's questioning people. He's talking to people who have seen little clips of it, who trying to track this down. And there's something just really terrifying about the whole concept, because the villain in this is, or if you want to call the villain the monster, whatever, is this like 1920s vaudeville style silent movie clown kind of guy. And I'm not normally like a big scary clowns guy or anything like that, but something about the way this one was presented, just the weirdness, the way that we're kind of getting the information third hand, like through someone who just saw a clip of a movie, and the way it's presented is super, super creepy. So that's Grin of the Dark. Number 2 is Ring by Kojo Suzuki. This is the book that the movie The Ring is based on, and it's a little bit similar, now that I think about it, to The Grin of the Dark, in that it's someone investigating this kind of maybe urban legend. In this one, if you've seen the movie, you know, but there's a videotape that supposedly you die 7 days after you watch it. The book follows fairly close to the movie, although the main character in the book is a male journalist, and there's a little bit more detail, but it takes place in Japan, and a really interesting look at Japanese culture for one thing, but also I think one thing that added to the creepiness of it is that the translation is a little bit stilted. I don't know, not great. So I don't know if I want to say it's not great, but it's like a lot of the sentences just like sound a little bit off, like they're just a little bit phrased oddly. And that seemed to really add to the creepiness, because I was like reading this thing where, like, it's just the sentences would be a little weird, and it's a terrifying concept to begin with. I really am looking forward to reading the next 2 books in the series, which I believe is Spiral and Loop, and I think they're releasing a bind up of all 3 in January. So I think I'm definitely gonna check that out. It was a book well worth reading. The next one on my list is another creepy clown book. Like I said, I'm not big guy who's scared of creepy clowns, but I do have 2 of them on my list, and that is It by Stephen King. I read this probably in like junior high, early high school, and definitely creeped me out. And I'm trying to get back into running, so I just did this thing where I bought the audiobook of it, but I could only listen to it while I'm running. So in the mornings when I'm going out there at like 5:45, it's still dark and it's very foggy in my area here in eastern Tennessee in the morning. So I'm running through darkness and through fog and listening to it. And I've been getting a little bit creeped out every time I run by a little a drain in the curb, a little sewer drain thing, storm drain. I get a little creeped out and I zip around it a little bit. I give it a little bit of a wider berth than I probably would have anyways. So this book, in some ways, is probably just a little bit of a nostalgia pick for me, but I think this book influenced me a lot. I will say, and I've seen some other people say recently, I was watching Stephanie's weekly wrap up, and she was talking about The Stand and how there's a lot of like the it's not very like racially sensitive and socially sensitive, which is definitely true of this book as well. It's an 80s book. It's some of those books to read them now, they don't use the language that we would want to use these days. So anyway, just something to be aware of if you haven't read any of that earlier Stephen King stuff, because there's definitely some stuff, like when I was running today and I was listening to it, I was like, this is a little much. And then there's also lots of murder and dismemberment and things like that as well. So lots of stuff to make you uncomfortable in that one. The fourth one is Zombie, and this is by an author you might not expect to find on this list, Joyce Carol Oates. I went into reading this book right after I read her book, What I Lived For, which is kind of like a touching, emotional literary journey kind of book. And then, then I went into this book, and it was crazy. So this book is a very short little book, but it's told from the perspective of this guy who is very crazy. His fantasy is to capture someone and lobotomize them and make them into basically a slave, like a zombie type person who will just like follow his instructions. That's his fantasy. Maybe kind of based on a Jeffrey Dahmer kind of thing, I would think. But definitely not what I was expecting out of Joyce Carol Oates. And the book is written from his point of view, and there's like weird capitalization, weird little drawings in the book. Very creepy, messed up read. Not for the faint of heart, that one. And not what I was expecting from Joyce Carol Oates. But I do love her writing, and I love how she dips into so many different genres. So interesting, when I was looking at both this one and Grin of the Dark on Amazon, I saw they both have like fairly low ratings. They have like 2.5 star is the average on both of them. So clearly a lot of people do not share my my like of these books. The final one is the only one I have a physical copy of. Maybe it's because the others are too creepy to have in my house. I don't know. But that is Offseason by Jack Ketchum. This book is a little bit different kind of creepy. It's more like violent and gory. It's not like unsettling in the ways that Zombie and Ring and stuff like that are. This is more just like gory and messed up and violent. This was Jack Ketchum's debut novel. I think I read about it from Stephen King first. I think he wrote about it in one of his articles or something, and that's how I found out about it. But it's a pretty crazy book. Basically, it's this woman goes to this cabin in the woods, and there is a group of cannibals who come after her. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's really is the basis. It seems like it shares a lot of DNA with a lot of. I've seen a lot of movies. I feel like they have this same kind of premise, and I don't know if they drew from Offseason or Offseason drew from them, or if it's just a shared thing. But Jack Ketchum is a very like impactful writer. His stuff is like really fast paced and really very gory. So there you go. Those are my top 5 genuinely creepy reads. You've been warned on all of them. Not for the faint of heart. If this is your first time watching my channel, please consider subscribing. I put out new book reviews on Mondays and new comic reviews on Thursdays. Here's a couple videos you might like. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.